Chapter 7. Elsa blocked them in an instant. Working with the Union was putting one foot in a trap. Plenty of streamers were destroyed once they put their lot in with the Union. More importantly, Elsa thought of Charles as her friend now. Why would she ever treat her friend like that? The Union did not give up. They used a different account to send her another message: you can decide how to split the profits. Heck, you can write the contract too. Elsa still blocked them without a second thought. Finally, the Union had no choice but to threaten her. If you keep refusing, we'll make it so that you can make it big in streaming again. Elsa finally responded this time, giving them a simple reply: I just want to know how many accounts you have for me to block. The Union was furious. It was the first time they had seen a streamer turn them down like this. They gave her one last cold message: you will regret this. Elsa responded by blocking them. Beep. Reward, 50 sincerity points. After dinner, Charles went back to the dorm and lay in bed. Suddenly, the system sounded in his mind. He was stunned. Is Elsa really that grateful to me? He had only received 10 sincerity points before this. Now, he had gotten 50 from Elsa in an instant. The 10 million he spent was totally worth it. He grinned from ear to ear. Charles then remembered his plan to buy a plane. He did not know if Deidre had contacted a seller yet, so he immediately sent her a message. I'm really sorry, Mr. Duncan. I haven't managed to contact a seller yet. In the meantime, why don't you buy a car tomorrow? Deidre replied quickly. Helpless, Charles had no choice but to agree. I don't know much about cars. Can you come with me tomorrow? Charles asked. It'd be my honor to serve you. Please give me your address. And I'll pick you up tomorrow morning. Deidre replied excitedly. She would stop at nothing to get closer to Charles. Why would she ever say no? Charles sent her the location, and she drove there the very next morning. When she saw Charles walk out of the school gate, her eyes widened in shock. Mr. Duncan, are you really a student? Charles looked back at the gate and smiled. Would I lie to you? Deidre was even more worked up now. She had not believed Charles when he last told her he was a student. How could a student casually fork out more than $4 billion? Now that she saw him at university with her own eyes, she finally believed him. When Charles walked over to her, she immediately opened the car door and said respectfully, After you, Mr. Duncan. Once Charles got into the car, she gently closed the door behind him before getting back into the car herself. She acted as though she was actually his chauffeur. It made Charles feel a little embarrassed, actually. As the car passed by a clothing store, Deidre suddenly stopped. Why did you stop? Charles asked curiously. Deidre looked Charles up and down before saying, Mr. Duncan, your clothes don't match your position. If you don't mind, I'd suggest buying a few sets of nicer clothing. It was not as though Charles had not thought about buying some fancier clothes. The problem was, he knew nothing about high-end fashion. If he dressed carelessly, he would be mocked as a nouveau riche and a country bumpkin. That was why he did not try to buy himself a new wardrobe. Today, though, he might be able to use Deidre's advice. To be honest, I don't really have much experience with fashion. Would you mind helping me pick out some outfits? Charles asked sincerely. It'd be my honor. Please, you don't have to ask for my help from now on. Just give me the order. Deidre said excitedly. It was indeed her honor to serve Charles. After all, how many students in the world could casually fork out billions? The two of them got out of the car and entered the clothing store. Welcome. The shop assistant walked over with a smile and asked enthusiastically, May I know what I can do for you? Charles replied without thinking, Bring out the most expensive clothes you have in your store. The assistant's stomach lurched. Who was this guy? Was he really that rich? He immediately asked for the most expensive clothes, and he wanted to see them all. The assistant looked Charles up and down. He did not look like someone who could afford the wares here. Fortunately, he had Deidre beside him. Deidre's professional suit had to cost tens of thousands, at least. Besides, she was tall, and she had an outstanding aura. The assistant could tell with one look that she was no ordinary person. That was the only reason why the shop assistant did not kick Charles out of the store. Even so, she explained patiently, "Sir, this is a branded store. The most expensive clothes here are designed by the top designers in Europe. The design fees alone are more than $100,000. Are you sure about this? If the design fees cost more than $100,000, the overall piece would have to cost $500,000 to $600,000 at least." The assistant explained everything in detail to see how Charles would react, and also to scare him off if he was not worth her time. "Just bring me the payment machine." Charles could tell what she was thinking. So he was not going to waste his breath. "I'll pay $10 million in advance, then I'll take my time going through your selection." The assistant's heart lurched again. "Are you serious, sir? Are you really going to pay us $10 million in advance? Stop wasting our time. Go and call your manager. This man is an important guest. He's way beyond your payroll." Deidre lost her patience and reprimanded the shop assistant. If this little shop assistant knew that Charles had bought an entire block at Jonestown Bay without batting an eyelid, she would definitely not hem and haw like this. The shop assistant immediately went to get their manager. Soon enough, a sexy woman in a white suit appeared in front of Charles. "What can I do for you, sir?" the manager of the clothing store asked. "Bring me the payment machine," Charles said impatiently. The manager duly obliged. She had already heard from the shop assistant that Charles wanted to pay an advance of $10 million. She definitely did not believe a word of that. Beep beep beep. Charles pressed his finger on the payment machine and a mechanical voice echoed through the clothing store. "Transaction complete. Transfer amount, $10 million. Everyone was struck dumb. He had really paid them $10 million in advance. The manager's and the shop assistant's attitudes instantly did a 180. The manager shouted, Hurry! Bring us the most expensive men's suits." She was afraid Charles would run away. It had been a long time since they had encountered such a generous customer. Someone who could casually advance $10 million could definitely spend tens of millions just as casually. The pretty shop assistant began to help Charles undress. They helped him change into one expensive suit after another. "What do you think?" Charles turned to Deidre every time he tried on an outfit. "I like it." Deidre nodded, suddenly feeling a little redundant. Clothes that were worth millions would make a beauty out of a beast. Besides, the store manager was here to personally give Charles pointers. Compared to a professional like her, Deidre's opinion really did not count for much. Even so, Charles consulted her every time. His respect for her moved her greatly.